As I lay on the sofa, holding my pregnant belly and hoping the nausea would fade, the sharp click of my sister-in-law's heels sent a chill through me. Before I could react, she stood over me, her cold eyes filled with hate. Without warning, she raised the heavy electric lamp and struck my arm with brutal force. Pain shot through me as I clutched my belly, fear taking hold. This wasn't just an attack on me, it was an attack on my baby. I was still reeling from the shock when the chilling truth hit me. What she did next was even more terrifying. Hello, my name is Lana Carter, and I'm 31 years old. Today should have been just another summer morning, but as I stood in the kitchen fighting the wave of nausea that gripped me, it felt far from normal. I'm 5 months pregnant, but this morning's sickness had refused to let me catch a break. The golden rays of August sunlight streamed through the large kitchen window of this colonial-style house in Riverside, bathing the polished marble counter in warmth. But to me, the light was too bright, and it only made my head spin worse. Pressing my forehead against the cool surface of the counter, I sighed, wishing this sickness would ease. Suddenly, my phone vibrated next to me. It was Michael, my husband, calling from Seattle, where he had been on a 3-week business trip. His voice brought a small wave of comfort. "Lana, are you okay? You sound tired." His concern was genuine. "I'm fine," I said softly, though my voice trembled slightly. "The baby's fine too. It moved a little this morning." I tried to sound cheerful, but the weight in my voice must have been noticeable. Michael sighed with relief. "I miss you both so much. Just a few more days and I'll be home, I promise." I forced a smile, though tears prickled the corners of my eyes. "I know. I miss you too." Michael worked as a software engineer, and his job had him traveling more than I liked, but this project in Seattle was critical for his career. I understood that, but today the loneliness of being in this house weighed on me more than usual. As I hung up the call, I heard faint whispers drifting from the entrance hall, and my chest tightened. Sylvia, my mother-in-law, and Brianna, my sister-in-law, were always around. Their presence was like a shadow I couldn't shake. I glanced around the kitchen, the antique clock ticking on the wall, the perfectly polished floors, and the expensive furniture. This house, with all its elegance, wasn't my home. It belonged to Michael's family. And ever since we had moved in after the wedding, I had tried to adapt. But lately, this place had begun to feel more like a prison. I placed my hand on my belly, feeling a slight flutter from the baby, and whispered, "Just a little longer." But deep down, I had a sinking feeling that this was only the beginning of something worse. I wasn't always this tired, lonely, and overwhelmed. There was a time when life felt simpler, full of hope and possibility. Just 2 years ago, while finishing my degree in graphic design at Brookdale University, I met Michael at a wedding. It was my best friend's wedding, held at a charming chapel with stained glass windows that painted the room in soft shades of amber and blue. Michael had this warm, genuine smile that instantly put me at ease. We were seated at the same table during the reception, and after a few minutes of casual conversation, it felt as though I'd known him for years. His kind nature, gentle laugh, and the way he listened when I spoke, it all drew me in. By the end of the night, I was sure I wanted to see him again. Our first date was at a cozy cafe near campus, where we shared laughs over coffee and discussed everything from favorite books to childhood memories. Over the next year, our relationship grew stronger. Michael was attentive, supportive, and had this calming presence that made me feel safe. After a year of dating, he proposed during a weekend getaway to the countryside, where he had set up a small picnic by the lake. The moment was intimate and perfect. We exchanged vows the following summer in a beautiful ceremony, surrounded by friends and family. The wedding felt like a fairy tale, at least back then. It was after our honeymoon that we made the decision to move into Michael's family home. His mother, Sylvia, had insisted it was the practical thing to do. "It's a big house," she said, "and it'll help you both save money for your future." At the time, it seemed reasonable. The house, with its colonial architecture, white columns, and sprawling front yard, was certainly grand enough for all of us to coexist peacefully. But peace was fleeting. The first 6 months were pleasant enough. Sylvia maintained her polite, teacher-like demeanor, and Brianna, having recently divorced, kept to herself. I tried to adjust to living with them and did my best to contribute by helping with household chores. I thought we were building a foundation of mutual respect. I was wrong. Everything changed the moment I announced my pregnancy. When I told Michael and his family that I was pregnant, I expected excitement. I hoped for warm hugs, congratulations, and words of support. Instead, what I received from Sylvia and Brianna were polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. At first, I brushed it off, thinking they just needed time to process the news. But within weeks, their indifference morphed into something harsher, something I hadn't anticipated. Sylvia, once polite and composed, began to criticize me for the smallest things. If I woke up late due to morning sickness, she'd comment on how women in her generation were stronger. If I missed a chore because I was nauseous or dizzy, she'd bring it up during dinner conversations, masked as an observation. "I managed a full-time job while raising 2 children," she would say, shaking her head. "You young women just don't know how to push through challenges." Her words always stung, but Michael wasn't home to see the full extent of it. He traveled more often for work after my pregnancy began, leaving me alone with his family. I didn't want to burden him, so I never mentioned the passive-aggressive comments over the phone. But they were chipping away at my strength. Brianna was no better. She had initially welcomed me into the family, but that warmth disappeared once my pregnancy was announced. It was as if the news reignited the bitterness from her failed marriage. She came home at odd hours, often wearing strong perfume that triggered my nausea, and deliberately made loud noises when I tried to rest. One day, when I had spent hours throwing up and was too weak to clean the kitchen, I overheard them whispering. "She's just using that pregnancy as an excuse to be lazy," Brianna said, her voice sharp. "When I get back on my feet, I won't be lounging around like her." Sylvia chuckled, as if my struggle was a joke. I was pregnant twice, and I never needed anyone to take care of me. The words burned, but I stayed silent. I thought that if I endured it long enough, things would get better. But they didn't. The days turned into weeks, and the tension in the house grew heavier. Morning sickness became a constant companion, leaving me drained and fragile. The baby's kicks were my only source of joy, a small reminder that something beautiful was growing inside me, even as my environment seemed determined to crush me. Sylvia and Brianna didn't miss an opportunity to make me feel worthless. They criticized how I did laundry, how I arranged the kitchen cabinets, and even the way I walked, blaming my sluggish movements on laziness instead of pregnancy fatigue. One morning, after another sleepless night, I sat in the living room with a cup of tea, hoping to ease the nausea. Sylvia entered, her gaze immediately locking onto the half-folded pile of laundry next to me. "Still not finished?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "When I was your age, I had 2 kids and still kept the house spotless." "You're falling behind, Lana." "I'm trying," I said softly, gripping the cup tightly to keep from shaking. Brianna strutted in moments later, dressed in designer clothes and carrying her expensive purse, as if she were headed to a high-society event. She didn't have a job, her fashion blog wasn't doing well since her divorce, but that didn't stop her from flaunting her luxurious lifestyle. She sat on the couch across from me, scrolling through her phone, her legs crossed elegantly. "Oh, by the way," she said with a smirk, "I left a mess in the kitchen. You might want to clean that up before Mom sees it. We wouldn't want you getting another lecture, would we?" My stomach churned, and I placed my hand on my belly as I felt another wave of nausea. The smell of Brianna's overpowering perfume wasn't helping. I tried to steady my breathing, but the room felt suffocating. "I'll do it soon," I whispered, knowing that no matter how much I tried, it would never be enough for them. Brianna leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "Honestly, are you sure you're even that sick? You could be exaggerating. Pregnancy isn't an illness, you know." I clenched my jaw, holding back the retort that burned on the tip of my tongue. Defending myself would only give them more fuel. Sylvia let out a sigh of exasperation, as if my very presence exhausted her. "If you can't manage the house now, how do you expect to take care of a baby?" Their words followed me everywhere, echoing in my mind even when I was alone. each passing day, their criticisms grew harsher, their gazes colder. The house that had once been filled with the promise of new beginnings now felt like a cage closing in around me. But something inside me told me that I couldn't endure this forever. The morning heat was unbearable, even with the air conditioning running. I lay on the leather sofa in the living room, my head throbbing and my body weighed down by exhaustion. The cheerful voice I had forced during my morning call with Michael now felt like a distant memory. Cold sweat clung to my skin, and the silk blouse I wore stuck uncomfortably to my back. I closed my eyes, placing my hand on my belly as the baby shifted slightly. Just a little longer, I whispered to myself, trying to ignore the dread creeping into my chest. The rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock blended with the faint chirping of cicadas outside. Even these mundane sounds seemed to intensify my nausea. I felt trapped in a place where time crawled, and every second reminded me of my isolation. Suddenly, the sound of heels clacking against the marble staircase pulled me back to reality. I didn't need to look to know who it was: Sylvia and Brianna. Their overly cheerful voices filled the hallway as they descended, their laughter echoing like a taunt. I kept my eyes closed, hoping they'd leave me alone, but their footsteps grew louder as they entered the living room. The air was thick with the overpowering scent of their perfumes, Sylvia's floral and Brianna's musky vanilla. My stomach twisted in protest. When I opened my eyes, Sylvia stood towering over me, her expression void of sympathy. Her perfectly styled hair and impeccable makeup only highlighted the harshness of her gaze. Brianna, standing slightly behind her, was busy touching up her lipstick in a small compact mirror. "You're still lying down?" Sylvia's voice was sharp, filled with the same disappointment she had expressed countless times before. "The housework isn't going to do itself, Lana. I managed to work while raising 2 children. You can't handle a little pregnancy?" I sat up slowly, clutching my belly as another wave of dizziness hit me. "I'll get to it," I said, barely above a whisper. Sylvia's gaze hardened. "You've been saying that all week." Brianna snapped her compact shut and grinned. "Maybe you should go to the hospital and let the doctors tell you what's real and what's in your head." Her voice dripped with sarcasm. I bit the inside of my cheek, refusing to respond. Sylvia turned and walked toward the corner of the room, where an expensive electric lamp sat on a side table. The lamp had a floral pattern on its porcelain base and a delicately crafted shade. It was part of a matching set that Sylvia always bragged about. Without warning, Sylvia picked up the lamp and handed it to Brianna, who took it with a wicked glint in her eyes. "You're just faking it," Brianna said as she raised the lamp high. I barely had time to react. Instinctively, I raised my arm to shield my head as the lamp came crashing down. The hard base struck my forearm with a force that sent shockwaves of pain shooting through my body. I cried out, the sound echoing off the walls of the room as the lamp shattered upon impact. Pieces of porcelain scattered across the floor, some cutting into my skin. My breath came in shallow gasps as I clutched my injured arm against my chest. The fabric of my blouse quickly darkened, the blood seeping through in patches of crimson. Tears blurred my vision, but I blinked them away, refusing to break down in front of them. "Oh my goodness, my hand must have slipped," Brianna said with mock innocence, a cruel smile tugging at the corners of her lips. She brushed a few shards of porcelain off her designer pants as if she hadn't just assaulted me. Sylvia didn't flinch. She stood with her arms crossed, her gaze cold and judgmental. "Clean this up before it gets worse," she said, as though we were talking about a simple household mess. I could barely hear her over the pounding of my heartbeat in my ears. My left arm throbbed with searing pain, but I forced myself to stand. My legs felt like jelly, and the room spun slightly, but I refused to collapse in front of them. Sylvia walked toward the door, grabbing her handbag. "We're going out for a while. When we get back, I expect this place to be spotless." Brianna followed her, laughing softly as she fixed her hair. "Don't forget to wipe up the blood. It's staining the floor," she added before walking out. The sound of their heels clicking against the marble floor grew softer until the front door closed with a heavy thud. Silence filled the house, but it wasn't comforting. It felt suffocating. I stood there, shaking, surrounded by shards of broken porcelain and the overwhelming stench of their lingering perfumes. My arm throbbed in time with my heartbeat, and the sight of my blood spreading across my sleeve made my stomach churn.
But something was different this time.
The fear I had been carrying for months was beginning to dissolve, replaced by something else, something stronger. I wouldn't stay silent anymore. I carefully made my way to the kitchen, rinsed my face with cold water, and called for an Uber. I was going to the hospital, and this time, I wasn't coming back. The Uber ride to Riverside General Hospital felt surreal, as if I were floating outside of my own body. The driver kept glancing at me through the rearview mirror, his concern evident, but I avoided his gaze. I cradled my injured arm against my body, the blood still seeping slowly through the fabric of my blouse. When we arrived, the cool, sterile air of the hospital lobby hit me, and for the first time in hours, I felt like I could breathe. I approached the reception desk, my voice steady despite the pain. "I need to see a doctor. I've been injured." Within minutes, a nurse escorted me to an examination room. I sat on the white table, rolling up my sleeve as carefully as possible. My arm was swollen, the skin bruised and tender. Blood trickled down to my wrist. The sight would have terrified me before, but now it only fueled my resolve. A middle-aged female doctor entered the room, her name tag reading Dr. Fiona Brooks. Her kind eyes softened as she examined my arm, gently pressing against the bruised area. I winced, and she immediately pulled back. "These are serious bruises," she said, her voice professional but laced with concern. "It looks like blunt force trauma." She began taking photos of the injury and documenting everything on her tablet. "How did this happen?" I hesitated for only a moment before answering. "My sister-in-law hit me with a lamp." Dr. Brooks's fingers froze over her tablet before she composed herself and continued typing. "I see. And you're pregnant, 5 months, correct?" I nodded. Her eyes darkened with seriousness.
This is no small matter.
Violence against a pregnant woman is taken very seriously. "May I take additional photos for evidence?" "Yes," I said quietly, feeling the weight of my decision settle in. This was it. I wasn't going back to that house, not after today. Dr. Brooks photographed my arm from various angles and handed me a medical certificate that confirmed the injuries were caused by physical assault. "I strongly suggest you report this to the police," she said, her tone gentle but firm. "Do you have a support system? Anyone you can call for help?" I swallowed hard, thinking of Michael. For so long, I had avoided telling him the full extent of what I was going through. But now, I didn't have a choice. "Yes, I'll handle it." Before I left, Dr. Brooks placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You're stronger than you think. Remember that." Those words lingered with me as I walked out of the hospital and into the afternoon sun. The warmth of the sun on my face felt different, like a promise of something better. Sitting in the Uber, I pulled out my phone and started making calls. The first call was to Wright and Sons Moving Company, the most reliable movers in Riverside. Their receptionist sensed the urgency in my voice and assured me that they could start the move today. "Yes, I need everything packed and moved by this evening," I said, checking my phone for photos of the house deed, proof that the property was legally mine. The house, which had been purchased by my grandfather in my name before his passing, was a detail I had kept quiet about when I married Michael. But today, that secret would save me. After arranging the move, I made another call to the bank to confirm that the deed was still safely stored. The bank clerk, sensing the gravity of the situation, promised to expedite the process. As I sat in the hospital parking lot, feeling the baby move inside me, I knew there was no turning back. By the end of the day, I would be free. By 2 p.m., the large white truck from Wright and Sons Moving Company was parked in front of the house. The sound of boxes being carried and furniture being moved echoed through the neighborhood. I stood at the doorway, directing the movers as they packed everything important: clothing, documents, keepsakes, and anything I would need for my new life. Several neighbors had gathered outside, curious about the commotion. Among them was Sarah Henderson, who lived across the street. She had always been kind to me, and seeing her approach brought a wave of unexpected relief. "Lana, are you okay?" she asked, her gaze falling on the bandage wrapped around my arm. Her expression darkened. "What happened to you?" I hesitated, but her genuine concern made it impossible to hide the truth. "It's a long story," I said softly. "But I'm leaving. I can't stay here any longer." Sarah's eyes filled with understanding, and without hesitation, she nodded. "I'll help." Before I knew it, other neighbors had joined in, quietly assisting with the packing. Linda Garner, another neighbor who had always smiled warmly at me during morning walks, handed me a glass of lemonade. "We've seen how Sylvia and Brianna treat you," she said gently. "You don't have to explain anything." Their support felt like a warm embrace, something I hadn't experienced in months. For the first time, I didn't feel alone. The movers worked quickly, carefully packing fragile items and loading them onto the truck. Linda helped me sort through kitchenware, while Sarah packed photo albums and other sentimental items. Even the movers seemed to handle everything with extra care, as though they knew the weight of the situation. I paused for a moment as I carefully wrapped the antique clock that had belonged to my grandmother. Its ticking had once been a source of irritation, but now it felt like a reminder of resilience. "This clock's been with me through everything," I murmured, placing it gently into a box. As the hours passed, the house grew emptier. By dusk, the furniture was gone, and the once grand living room was filled with shadows cast by the setting sun. The silence was refreshing, a stark contrast to the suffocating tension I had endured for so long. The movers finished packing the final boxes and loaded them onto the truck. I took one last look around the house, breathing in the emptiness. The heavy atmosphere that had haunted me was gone, replaced by the lightness of freedom. I thanked the neighbors as they hugged me and wished me well. Linda's words stayed with me. "You're stronger than you think, Lana. You've taken the first step toward something better." With the last box secured, I climbed into my car and followed the moving truck to my new apartment, a luxury high-rise with a breathtaking view of the city. The building had 24-hour security, something I knew I would need moving forward. When I arrived at the apartment, the movers began unloading everything and arranging the furniture according to my instructions. As I stepped inside, the clean, modern space felt like a fresh start. The large windows overlooked the city, and the sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and purple. I took a deep breath, letting the view wash over me. For the first time in months, I felt safe. But there was one more thing I needed to do. I dialed Michael's number, my fingers trembling slightly. When he picked up, his voice was warm, but I could hear the concern beneath it. "Lana? What's going on?" "I need to tell you everything," I said, my voice steady. And I did. It was completely dark by the time Sylvia and Brianna returned home, paper bags from their shopping trip clutched in their hands. The warm glow of lights illuminated the surrounding houses, but their house was shrouded in an unnatural darkness. Sylvia frowned as she approached the front door. "Why are the lights off? That girl is probably lying down again, pretending to be sick." "She's so useless," Brianna muttered, digging through her handbag for the keys. The heavy door creaked as they pushed it open, and Sylvia reached for the light switch. The fluorescent lights flickered on, casting a cold, artificial glow over the empty space. Both women gasped, their shopping bags hitting the floor with a thud. "What is this?" Sylvia's voice rose in panic as her eyes darted around the room. The expensive console table, the antique mirror, the Persian rug. Everything was gone. The once furnished living room was now a hollow shell. Only dusty footprints and faint outlines on the walls remained, mocking the life they had built here. Brianna rushed to the china cabinet, but it, too, had been emptied. Her precious wine glasses and the set of porcelain dishes she had bragged about for years were nowhere to be found. "No, no, no," she shrieked, frantically opening drawers and cabinets that had already been cleared out. She couldn't have taken everything. Sylvia stormed upstairs, the sound of her heels striking the wooden steps echoing like thunder. She threw open the doors to the bedrooms, but they were as empty as the rest of the house. The realization hit her hard, and she let out a frustrated scream. Meanwhile, The sound of car tires crunching on the gravel outside broke the tense silence. The front door burst open, and Michael rushed in, his suit wrinkled and his tie askew. His face was a mixture of confusion, anger, and deep concern. "What on earth is going on here?" he demanded, his voice booming through the empty house. Sylvia stumbled down the stairs, her face pale. "Michael, you're back. There's been a mistake. That girl, she's gone, and she took everything." Michael's gaze hardened. "What do you mean she's gone?" Before anyone could respond, headlights illuminated the driveway, and the sound of a car door shutting signaled my arrival. I stepped out of the car, the bandage on my arm stark white under the streetlights. I could feel all their eyes on me as I walked slowly toward the house, cradling my belly protectively. "Lana!" Michael's voice cracked as he rushed toward me, but before he could touch me, the 2 security guards I had hired stepped forward, positioning themselves between me and Sylvia. "Stay back," one of the guards warned. Michael's gaze flickered between the guards and me, confusion clouding his face. "What's happening?" "Lana, talk to me." I took a deep breath and pulled out my phone, the screen lighting up with the surveillance footage from this morning. I held it up for him to see. The video showed everything, the moment Brianna raised the lamp, the way it struck my arm, and the aftermath of the attack. Michael's face turned ashen. He watched in silence, his jaw clenched and his hands trembling. When the video ended, I handed him the medical report and the house deed, the proof of ownership that Sylvia and Brianna had never known about. "This house is in my name," I said calmly, my voice unwavering. "And this," I gestured toward the medical report, "is the proof of what they did to me." Sylvia's face drained of color, and Brianna took a step back, shaking her head. "It was an accident." My hand slipped. Michael's eyes flashed with anger as he stepped toward them. "Enough." His voice shattered the silence, and I flinched at the intensity. "You attacked my pregnant wife and lied about it." Sylvia tried to regain her composure, straightening her back. "Michael, we were only trying to help. She was being lazy." "No," his voice cut her off like a blade. "I don't want to hear another word. You've done enough damage." He turned to the security guards. "Make sure they pack only their essentials and leave immediately." The guards nodded and escorted Sylvia and Brianna upstairs. Their protests were met with silence as they stuffed their belongings into suitcases. Their once proud and arrogant demeanor had crumbled, leaving them looking like defeated shells of the people they had been. When they finally left the house, escorted by the guards, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The front door closed behind them, and the silence that followed was different from before. It was peaceful. Michael approached me, his eyes filled with regret. "Lana, I'm so sorry. I should have seen what was happening." I placed my hand on his, squeezing gently. "We're okay now. That's what matters." The following morning, everything was set in motion. I filed a police report, submitting the surveillance footage and medical documents as evidence. Dr. Brooks had already sent her professional statement to the authorities, confirming the injuries and their cause. Within hours, Sylvia and Brianna were taken into custody. I didn't feel fear when the police officers arrived at their apartment to arrest them. I felt relief. Sylvia, the once composed and controlling matriarch, looked disheveled as she was escorted into the police car. Brianna, who had always carried herself with smug arrogance, was in tears, begging the officers to believe it was just an accident. But the evidence spoke for itself. They were both charged with assault on a pregnant woman, a serious offense under state law. The judge denied them bail due to the overwhelming evidence of violence, and within weeks, they were sentenced to prison, Sylvia for 6 years and Brianna for 5. The courtroom was silent as the verdict was read, except for Brianna's sobbing. As they were led away in handcuffs, I felt the final weight lift off my chest. Justice had been served. A year had passed since that day, and my life had completely transformed. Michael and I moved into a luxury apartment on the 42nd floor of a high-rise building overlooking the city. The view of the river stretching toward the horizon symbolized the freedom and peace I had longed for. Our twins, Emma and Liam, were born healthy and filled our days with joy. Their giggles were the soundtrack of my mornings, replacing the oppressive silence that once haunted me. Michael had left his demanding job and joined a local tech firm in Riverside, so he could spend more time with us. This morning, as the sun poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I prepared breakfast while the aroma of fresh bread filled the apartment. The dining table was set by the window, and the city skyline stretched out like a painting in front of me. Michael entered the room, carrying Emma in one arm and Liam in the other. His once indecisive nature had vanished. Now, he was the man who had stood by me when I needed him most, and together, we had built a life free of fear. "I'll take the twins for a walk after breakfast," he said, kissing my cheek. I smiled, grateful for the man he had become. "Sounds perfect." Occasionally, news about Sylvia and Brianna reached us. They were struggling in prison, isolated and bitter, their once close relationship fractured beyond repair. Sylvia blamed Brianna for the attack, and Brianna accused Sylvia of dragging her into it. Their downfall was well known in the community, and neither of them would regain their former status. I thought about them less and less as the days passed. The events of that day no longer haunted me. They were simply a reminder of how far I had come. I ran my fingers over the faint scar on my arm, a symbol of pain that had transformed into strength. Standing by the window, I watched the morning sun illuminate the city, the twins' laughter filling the room. I had reclaimed my life, and this time, it was mine to live freely. Thank you for listening to my story. If you enjoyed it, please like this video, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to the channel for more captivating stories. Your support means everything. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update.